Om yo brahmanan vidadati purvam yo vaivedamscha prahinohi tasmai tanha deva atmabudhi prakasha mumukshurvai sharnamaham prapadje. Om shantihi shantihi shantihi. That one formless presence who projected Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, and who delivered the Vedas unto Lord Brahma, who is the eternal bridge to immortality, who is actionless, faultless, ever perfect, who resembles fire that has consumed all its fuel. I go for refuge to that one supreme Brahman, whose light turns the understanding of mankind to the Atman, the indivisible self in all. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavo Vahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, divine reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the studies. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. So it is Buddha Purnima today, a holy day for Lord Buddha. And so as Vedantists, we worship that singular soul who, like our great master Sri Ramakrishna, came in a certain age to lift the darkness of ignorance, like a veritable sun god whom we've been looking at with the Akshi Upanishad over the past few visits to the Portland Center here. We are in Portland at the SRV Center. We have a small group gathered today, and then of course our live streaming audience for different points of the world. I know for a fact, like Iceland and Hungary and Denmark, Australia, the east coast of the United States, people are looking in at these classes, and some of them have written in and said, we've seen all of them, because on YouTube you can find dozens of them, and we've seen some of them several times. So we know people are tuning into the Dharma in the West, and of course we have people watching from India too, students in India. And therefore they're benefiting by these teachings, which our founder Lex Hixon and I, in the early days of our sadhana, agreed upon, that there was nothing equivalent to or like the Dharma. Morality, ethics, okay to a certain point. Intellectual pursuits, okay to a certain point. Rationale and reasoning, okay to a certain point. But getting beyond those conventions and those common runs that people qualify themselves in lower knowledge, aparavidya, like theology and science, for instance, the rock and a hard place people are finding themselves between as far as their own beliefs go these days. Getting beyond those are facilitated by Dharma, and it's you have to develop a taste for it. It's rather rare because our parents didn't raise us in it, because it wasn't given to them. And so particularly in America, which we have our eye upon, and which other great saints had their eye upon, like Augustine and St. Paul and Thomas Aquinas and Meister Eckhart early on, looking on the Western culture in its European phase and all the way up to present day with America and its very short lifespan right now of great opulence and great power, but with not a lot of feeling or fealty towards things that are of the heart, and probably not even things of the cosmic mind, more the surface mind. Everything's made of particles, but to find particles and release their power for destruction is not a good course to follow. You have to find ways of using your intellectual knowledge to move towards higher mind, deeper mind, cosmic mind. We've been talking about it lately a lot in the Hawaii series we've just been given. Mind is the kingdom of heaven and so forth. So these are more important aspects of life and bring forth the non-dual element in things, which we are coming to in the Upanishad. Akshi Upanishad speaks in terms of this fourth state of the 7 states of yoga, and as being recognizing the dream to be, the life to be dreamlike. And it might be a little bit of a simplistic way of explaining it, because dreams we know are come and go and so forth, but isn't that sort of what the waking dream is like too? Things constantly coming and going, and people getting mesmerized, hypnotized by outer phenomena, and never seeing the origin to things, the cause for things, including the suffering that comes from not seeing deeply, also comes from this surface way of looking at things, and negativities too, trying to escape suffering when it needs to be encountered and transcended. You cannot get to the infinite through the finite, and people are acting as if you can. You're going to have to transcend the finite. That's one of the great teachings of India. And so there is a gradual way of Kramamukti, it's called, which probably many of the householder devotees of the world, some 5 million now, devotees of Sri Ramakrishna we hear. So here we have just half dozen in the room, and then we have several dozen on the camera, and behind them there are hundreds and thousands who are watching the classes later, and behind them there's 5 million people. So it's a large family that we belong to, and that's just the Ramakrishna order alone, not to speak of other great orders that are there, like the Shankara order and so forth. But many of these orders are monastic, and in the West, very few monastic orders that have been able to reach out to the people and convey to them the essence of a life of solitude. It's a life of racing, of activity, restlessness, and quite often then you start, things like contentment and peace of mind go missing in that. And you can't find your way home, as the old songs in the 60s used to say. You can't find my way home. So that home, of course, is ever present and readily available to every soul who keeps their inner vision singular, like if I and I be single. I and I be single isn't necessarily such a high state. It can be, depending on the level of consciousness of any given person, like a luminary. But for others who are still involved to some degree with family and making a living, which most of us are, the everyday matters of life, you can live with a single eye amidst that. It's actually advised, and it's probably the only way to live. Living any other way is risky at best, and you risk this fall into what we call Maya, or what has been called samsara, constant rounds of birth and death. Even if you just say inside of one lifetime, constant rounds of phenomena as if each breath you take is birth, and each breath you hold is life, and each breath you expel is death. So you're going through many transformations with every breath, with every 24-hour period that you wake, dream, and sleep. So that brings it back to the dream, that after you've come a certain way in the teachings, then you see the dreamlike nature. And if you want to explain that philosophically, you call it a projection. There are words for that in our tradition, in Sanskrit, sankalpa and chittabhasa, reflection of consciousness in things and in nature. But the real thing is not the reflection. This whole world is a stage, and there's a dancer on it, and when you get involved in the dance, you get swept into the dance and forget that you're the stage you're standing on, and that you are the one who's doing the dance. And this puts you at odds with your actionless nature, as I was just chanting. Brahman is actionless and faultless. And so keeping in touch with that non-dual nature is the fifth stage of this thing. So I'm beginning to comment already on this chart that we left off with, and that we've used as a means to explain Samkriti's visit to the sun god. I mean, that's basically how this Upanishad has started off, if you remember when we started into it recently, that Samkriti repaired inward to the solar being and propitiated the sun god inside of himself, who is provider of light, and who gives everyone their flood of days, as the Upanishad starts out saying. Lights every day, and every morning returns. You see, even in a physical level, that's a great wonder if you're taking stock or account of your days in a conscious way. If they just fall into a sort of miasmic hypnotism, and you're not conscious of the coming, going of days, and time pulls a fast one on you, and before you know it, it's the time for the sun to set on your life. And what have you got left over? You see, have you extracted any essence out of all this chain of experiences? These are matters for deep thinkers. Most surface thinkers will never consider it. They would just spend their time, many of them rather mindlessly, and others not caring in a kind of cavalier attitude way. And but the deep thinker will stop, like sit under a tree, whether it's 12 days and 12 nights in the wilderness or 40 days under the bo tree, will stop and consider everything, and find out marvelously that when they stop the whole process. If they stop the mind from thinking, everything stops. And when everything stops, time goes away, and there's this eternal moment that stands revealed. Okay? And they say, oh, I think I'll live in that now. But they could never see that in this rush of activity, which is why we just chanted, Brahman is beyond the three phases of time. Meditate on that Brahman as your own self in your heart. And that's the way the sloka starts in the Svetashvatara Upanishad, and at the end it says, who is beyond the three phases of time, that one great being. Paras trikala takalapi dristaha, the seer, drista, is beyond the three phases of time, past, present, and future. So that's a state of oneness to get to. That's, you might say, if not ultimate, a penultimate state to get to, that the seers desire very much, because it equates to peace of mind and equanimity and steady wisdom and deep meditation, and it also allows you to act in service without either seeking the fruits or enjoying the fruits necessarily. They come and go, and you just do the work, and you feel very balanced even in that karma yoga way. I was talking to a computer tech recently who fixed my computer right in front of me, much to my nervousness, as I saw 100 screws come out of it and everything go into pieces before my very eyes. But as he was working, we were talking about how service is the one avenue open to people if they want, since work is the only yoga. I mean, we know there's 4 yogas, and 3 of them are practically unknown to most people. not many people meditate, nor do they study the scriptures, nor do they have any devotion to God, because God doesn't exist anymore for them, or they don't know what it is. So the one avenue open is this karma yoga avenue. So action, and it's a very important yoga according to Vivekananda, who came here amongst us and sort of gave it a new life, a facelift, as it were, because Krishna had spoken about it in the Gita with the Karma Yoga chapters, and then you flash forward some thousands of years, and there's Swami Vivekananda in the scene, seeing how restless we are and rajasic, and trying to raise us to a more sattvic balanced position, and it's got to be done through work. Well, you might not be able to get to the infinite through the finite, but you can get to sattva through rajas. And you're not going to get anywhere with tamas, that heavy, weighty, slothful, depressed all the time kind of feeling. So action has a moderate value to you, but it has a great value, a great benefit to you if you can do it in balance. That is, if you earn the right to be sattvic and balanced and then engage in work, rather than the way people are approaching work as a labor or as something restless, or yes, even something even that's quite common and everyday, and you're not extracting any essence at the end of the day out of it. So all of this is a part of this tone and tenor of the Akshi Upanishad. Akshi means, again, to see clearly. And Samkriti is this rishi who's desiring to have his vision clarified even more. He's already a quite illumined soul. He says, so where do I go for this ultimate light? Let's approach the God of light. Maybe he knows, you see. Sort of like Nachiketas in the Katha Upanishad approaching death to find out what was beyond death. You go to the authority of the matter. If you want to know which garden is the best in Calcutta, because there's 4 or 5 really beautiful gardens, then Sri Ramakrishna said you call the owner of the garden, because you don't have time to look at all 5 in one day. So, and you ask the owner, what's your best garden? And he tells you, and you go there. So you're going to the authority right away. And, we could say in the tone and tenor of Vedanta that the real source, meditate on your own self seated in your heart, is you. But you can't go there with any reliability anymore, because your self disappears when you try and find it, or the ego crops up in the way. And so it's very hard to take yourself as your own counsel in a day and time like this, and in a country like this, where there really is only one yoga going on, and that's work, and that's being done selfishly. Or in a limited way, because just working for the good of your family only is a kind of selfishness. The rishis didn't hold this idea that my children were my own, for instance, and that only my family is important. They were living for all children, for all people, and so often the children would bounce between parents and between gurus. Oh, you go over there and spend some days with him or her, but who's ever heard of that in this day and age? And why should we, when there aren't a lot of luminaries living in our neighborhoods? Where do you find one? You have to go to a specialized, rarefied location where someone's qualified themselves over years, decades maybe lifetimes, in order to trust giving your children or your wife or your husband or anyone to them for counsel. So my point is, most people can't go to themselves with any reliability. So they're going to have to find a teacher that can act as authority. And in this case, with some kritis, had gurus. You do in India, it's the first thing you do. You don't go through life without a guide. No, doesn't matter if you're illumined in a previous lifetime or not, you get your initiation. Because Maya is that ferocious and is that clouding that any person could encounter it and all of a sudden become forgetful. And that's dangerous. Remembrance, smriti, rupena samstitadu, to remember everything in a steady way is most important, from breath to breath until it becomes the very fiber of your being, like food's digested and becomes a part of your body, your health. So you have to hear this truth constantly and meditate on it and extract the essence out of it. This has to be going on, ongoing. with every breath, with every day, with every lifetime. So they have teachers. So some Krityas had teachers, but he says, now I want a kind of an ultimate teacher now. Let's repair to the solar, to the realm of light. So he goes inside and meditates, offers his propitiation to Surya, the sun god, pictured here as an image, and asks him his questions. And so the whole Upanishad is then the sun god telling Sankriti about the highest truth, that the possessors of wisdom and the livers of spiritual life hold most dear. And so we have gone through that up to Shloka 15 as of last time. That does pretty much cover the first three states of the 7 states of yoga. I like this very much, this 7 states of yoga, because we know there's 8 limbs of yoga, and there's so many different numbered systems throughout the ages, but this one is not brought out very much at all. I found a few teachers that are aware of it, and it's not taught very much. It's hidden in a minor Upanishad that is not studied very much, because Shankara never took the Akshi Upanishad and wrote a commentary on it like he did 10 or 11 of the other 108 Upanishads. So he's nobody's really taken this Akshi Upanishad very, very much and brought it out to find out that the sun god is talking about 7 stages of yoga. So I like this very much as a feature and as sort of a guide through the Upanishad, because they stretch over all the slokas, these 7 stages, over some 48 slokas. We're now on Shloka 15 and slowly moving through it, because there's so much to say about each sloka. I mean, really, each word in each sloka almost deserves a commentary at times, like this word projection, sankalpa. Until you understand that, you probably will not understand the expression life as a dream. You'll think about it on too much of a surface level. Oh, it's a dream. That doesn't quite make sense to me. I'm awake, But you must wake from the waking state too, and you connect the waking to the dreaming, and those two to deep sleep, and then those 3 to Om. And this is the classic way to proceed inwardly. And who is going inwardly? They're all going outward. They're rushing outward with the senses and the objects, even more and more like a glut, beating a hasty path into matter. And everyone's doing it, including the intellectuals, the scientists, just obsessed with matter. And nobody ever thinks, maybe it's not real, or maybe it's not going to satisfy me in the end, or gee, I found out it was just matter was all made of vibrating particles, changing at a billionth of a second, but I still didn't give it up. I still had some hope for it, you see. But today's Buddha's birthday, and he told us at the end of his life, have no hope for me anymore for the world. I'm gone forever. Poof, you see, out of here. He had his nirvana, and he saw through the world, and he transcended it. He probably had done that in previous lifetimes, but he had to come and do it in front of people again. And so we have to worship his birthday every year after he's gone, after a great steamliner has passed over the ocean of the world. We're still seeing some waves coming off the back of that great streamliner, and then another one comes along called Jesus, and another one comes along called Shankara, and another one comes along called Chaitanya, and then finally Ramakrishna comes along with 2 others beside him. 3 steamliners are going across. Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi, and Swami Vivekananda are passing across the surface of our life and leaving huge tracks in the ocean that can be followed. For a couple 100 years, they say. Sri Ramakrishna will hold up the curtain of Maya for a couple 100 years after his death, and people can duck under it, you see. Otherwise, it's Atlas Shrugged kind of phenomena, and he can only hold it up so long, and it'll come crashing down. And it'll be very hard to get to the essential teachings of a 2,000-year-old avatar, or a 2,550-year-old avatar like Buddha. You'll have to go to the gurus who specialize in keeping these teachings current in the world at very great cost to themselves. Very, very difficult to interest people in this day and age in the solution, which is dharma. There's just saying. Developing a taste for it is maybe the least of the problem. Believing it, following it, proving it to yourself, living in it, becoming dharmi, a swadharmi, making it your specialized thing. That's what the devotees are doing. And in a country where there is only one avenue called action, then you discover slowly about these other avenues of meditation, wisdom, and the madness of love, the madness of knowledge, as we were just reading here before the live streaming audience joined us in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We read before the class, so Sri Ramakrishna was saying, haven't you heard of the madness of love and the madness of knowledge? That's a very good kind of madness. But most are mad for the world, mad for pleasures, mad for objects, and so forth. So you're going to have to develop a different kind of madness and go to a different insane asylum, rather than the insane asylum of this world, which is full of millions of howling lunatics, to quote Vivekananda in his poem. So with that said then, I like very much this chart, and I'd like to, before we take up the actual slokas again, just do a little commentary on it, because we have covered pretty much, or will cover by the time we reach sloka 19, the first three stages of yoga, according to this sun god talking to Samkriti. He says, first of all, yoga. And this is such a beautiful teaching, because yoga is a universal word. Yes, it's Sanskrit, but it's become so well known, maybe the best known word in Sanskrit from India and the whole world is yoga. And we don't want to mistake it just for physical yoga, but even that has its place. But the 4 yogas, for instance, I was just talking about, or the 18 yogas of the Gita that Krishna talks about, and a whole host of other kinds of yogas that are there in the teachings of other traditions of India. So yoga says here, they cross transmigratory life with yoga. So that's the first thing you have to do. You have to realize that life is passing by all the time, and you want to cross over that to the farthest shore, as the Svetasvatara Upanishad says. And you're going to do that, you're going to have study, with an acharya. So you've got this desire to be free, you might say, and not to be caught in the meshes, the net of Maya. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, the fish with it, is down in the mud, thinks it's safe, but then it finds out it's got the fisherman's net in its teeth. He dove into the mud of the world thinking he'd be safe there and hiding, but actually death was just right there with him, ready to pull him up out of his watery grave, as the song says in India. O self, you're just a sparkling fish existing on the surface of relative existence, where death is granted as fishing ground. That's a quote of our teacher, our founder, Lexixian, his translation of one of Ram Prasad's songs. Quick, dive deep before death comes and casts his net. So you're just a sparkling fish on the surface. So this deep dive has to happen, but you can't dive with the idea of death, and with the idea of ignorance, and with the idea of impurities, and take that with you into this dive. Like we were talking about at satsang last night, right here in this room, you don't intensify an impure mind. So these are, you practice yoga to remove as many of those defects as possible. Then you go to an acharya or a guru who gives you the studies and the scriptures, and that removes some more. So this is a process you're going through. You're not jumping from the bottom step to the highest step. Oh, now I was attached to matter. All of a sudden, I realized something about it, that it didn't fulfill me, or it depressed me a lot. So I think I'll just jump into non-dual meditation. Poof, you see. But all the other steps in between are left unexplored. And in those steps in between are good and bad things that you need to know about the process. You need to know what karmas you're carrying, because you don't want to take them and intensify them, do you? As the further inside you go, the closer you get to God, the more the light is, and the more intense it is, and so you might have some impurities in you that are getting intensified in that light. That's coming from Kundalini Yoga system, where even here at the third eye, there's a poison. There's a poison here, and there's a poison here at the heart. So these are high centers, but they still contain poison. The poison here would be disorientation. You arrived here too early. You jumped steps too quickly, and then you got to the third eye and you saw a great light, but you got disoriented and fell out of it, and got dizzy, and couldn't hold it. You didn't have the capacity to keep yourself up, and falling from it is risky. And then trying to approach it again and attain it and falling from it again. But if you're not making the grade in any level of consciousness, transmigratory life means you're transcending by degrees these thoughts that you have about birth and death being real, which are lifetimes old, and about ignorance being real, and so forth, about your lack of self-confidence, and all the karmas and sufferings that the world is going through around you. These are affecting you, and you could begin to take them too seriously or in the wrong way. So you have to purify those mechanisms which you're working through, like na asatya vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate satyaha, Krishna says in the Gita. The unreal never is. The real never ceases to be. The truth about both has been known by the seers. So you have to then separate the wheat from the chaff, realize the unreal is the unreal, and realize that your consciousness is real, and these stations that it's manning are unreal. They're not sentient, in other words. Only you are sentient. So when you visit a place, or you visit a body, or you visit a state of mind, you associate with it, and then you give it up, just like outgrowing old sets of clothes. You keep your consciousness free of identification with these errant thoughts, or these stodgy mechanisms called bodies and things like that. And so these are the kind of thoughts that are on Samkriti's mind when he approaches the sun god. He says, I want more buoyancy. I want more deeper purification on subtler levels. And the sun god is living in that state, see. That state is called Shivapada. See, Shivapada means the state of Shiva. You're at his feet, and so you're access to all of him. So you're in that state with Shiva. You're one with him. So that's what drives the luminary to become illumined, to court the company of the holy and become one with Brahman like they are. And so the exemplar is there, you see. So basically you're going from this desire to be free to a guru who is going to give you the studies that will further purify your mind. Then you're jumping to a sansarga. You finally get non-attachment, because your attachment was mixed with non-attachment before. Oh, I know this is not good for me, but I still covet it, you see, kind of thing. I'm not doing everything in the light. You see, there's some shadows there. I'm aware of them, but I let them be. See, I compromise. And I was telling people last night who were asking me at satsang, tell me what that's like, that stage of growth. So I went back to food, and then I went to breath, you see, and then from food to breath to prana, and from prana to psychic prana. There are certain exercises that you undertake, and if you have to backtrack to do them, well, that's better than arriving at a premature high state of consciousness with an impure mind, with hidden impurities that will all of a sudden jump forward when you least expect it, because isn't that what's happening out here in the world? People's karmas are coming back to them, and they don't know from where. They can't trace the effect back to the cause, because it's been a long time since they did that act or those actions that stored up the karma that are then fructifying years later or lifetimes later. They look at lifetimes of karma. See, prarabdha is the karma you're dealing with right now. Well, fine. Maybe I can take a bite of my karma from the past and work it out here. Good for you. You're starting to make karma mukti progress, you see. But that doesn't mean that the karmas from your past lifetime aren't still lingering back there. You see, what do I do about them in this lifetime, so that I don't have to encounter them in the next lifetime? That is, I don't have to be born with parents who never taught me the dharma, or I don't have to be born with parents who don't even love me, see, or with ignorant family members, or being born in a society that has no affinity for divine things at all. Then I'll be able to make better choices and stay free. So this all is leading towards non-attachment. But the most beautiful thing of these three, because in the slokas themselves it says here, coming to the next stage of yoga called analysis, that's the second stage of yoga. The sadhaka resorts to the foremost scholars who are well known for their serious interpretations of smriti and shruti. So basically, smriti, is these stories like Mahabharata and things like that Swami Vivekananda was raised with when his mother and father read them as a child. We didn't get that. We got Aesop's fairy tables or some silly stuff, you see. Hey diddle diddle, But they got these stories of great sages and saints from the past of India that taught the Dharma to people or exemplified higher truth. And then Shruti is that which must be heard. Smriti, it can be heard. You see, it's inspirational. It helps the householder. But Shruti is for the serious practitioner. Here's the truth in no uncertain terms, given to you as in non-dual atmosphere. Thou art that, and so forth. See? This self is Brahman. Meditate upon the Lord as your own self seated in your heart. Those kinds of teachings, you see, cut right to the chase, you see. And if you're a soul that's interested in awakening spiritually, these will cause you to sit up straight and come to attention. See? Just like a sergeant saying, "Attention!" And the troops will all snap to attention. You see, it's a discipline. But this is, of course, in a non-violent army. You're not out there to go harm people by splitting the atom and releasing a power for destruction. You're ready to go inward, you see, and join the ranks of the knowers of Brahman, and then come back and help people in a spirit of concrescence to ameliorate and help them neutralize their karmas and to do away with the samskaras that are negative. So this is all happening and leading to non-attachment. But so the most wonderful thing is this fourth state now that we're about to embark on. We'll read a few slokas about the third state and the non-attachment state, because that has to mature over time. But you can see how it's very simply put, and these three are all in the waking state. You're going through transmigration, in the waking state basically, and you're getting a teacher and studying the scriptures in a waking state, and your non-attachment is also dawning upon you in a waking state basically. But in the dreaming state, as a state of philosophy, you realize everything is a dream. So this is a most beautiful way of rising to the fourth state. Your non-attachment avails you of the ability to do away with the dream, the appearances of things. The unreal never is. The real never ceases to be. And you've heard that, and you've separated the wheat from the chaff long enough and practiced your discrimination between Purusha and Prakriti, or the sentient and the insentient. You've heard that enough from your teachers till finally it dawns on you in such a deep way that you just say, life's a dream, though true it seem. But the only truth is me, the living. So that was in one of Swami Vivekananda's letters to one of his disciples. The real me is none but he, and never, never matter changing. He wrote this down. See? Life's a dream, though true it seem, but the only truth is he, the living, see, not the dead. Let the dead bury their dead. See, but you come with me and follow me and get eternal life, Jesus said. The real me is none but he. So the real self is none but Brahman, not the ego, not the body, not the world. And never, never matter changing. So this is just a letter he penned out to one of his devotees and sent this little poem, you see. And now it's rather a famous poem amongst the Vedantas, Ramakrishna order. So that just shows how definite the conclusion that the world is unreal is to beings like Swami Vivekananda. And they won't go up and lick up the spittle they spat out on the sidewalk. They say, oh, I renounced the world, I'm not going to go back and take it on again. It's a very beautiful thing in one of his letters. He said, we were just a bunch of young teenage boys, and our master had just passed away. And we had left our home for him. But now our parents wanted us to come back. Oh, your master's dead, come back. And they were living in a monastery, in an old building that was haunted. And the landlord was letting them live there for almost nothing. And he said, all around us in Calcutta were our parents trying to call us back, and all these other religious organizations trying to nip us in the bud. You see, other orders there around them, trying to disband them. But Sri Ramakrishna had taught us one thing, the ability to live an actual spiritual life, or to actually live a spiritual life. See, the rest didn't have that. Parents didn't have it. The religious organizations didn't have it because they were just churches and, going about their daily routine with no sadhana, no austerity, no real desire to realize God that day before the sunset. You see. They didn't have that. But Sri Ramakrishna had given it to the young boys. This is how you live an actual spiritual life, and this is what it looks like. See? So he penned that out in a letter to somebody. Said Ramakrishna had given us that great thing. So that's the distinction between souls who come to that high level of the world's a dream, though true it seem. They see right through it. They can see through it philosophically, and then they can see through it physically, because it's just all vibrating particles. They can see through it using their sadhana. They can open their single eye and see through it. They can go into deep sleep and see through it. When form disappears in deep sleep. There's so many ways in which they penetrate through it to get to the essence. And so that fourth state is actually just called swapna. You think you see it all as a dream. It's very close to another great system earlier than that time was Yoga Vasishta's system, the 7 levels of upper and lower knowledge. It follows somewhat this scheme, only in a more delineated way. So this is my commentary prior to our study of the ongoing slokas that we're engaged in. You can see where it will lead to a state of non-dual awareness. So non-dual awareness isn't going to dawn on a person who still considers the world to be real. It's one of the requisites for understanding non-duality would be that you've renounced all. You'll know it, as one of the Upanishads says, Brahman is not matter, Brahman is not energy, and Brahman is not thought. That's one of the most succinct ways I've ever heard it put, because those are the things that are on the mind of the Westerner: matter, energy, and thought. Matter for the physicist, and energy for the psychic, and thought for the intellectual. You see, so you're not getting beyond the intellectual frame of reference. They're caught right in those 3, or in one of them, or all of them. But then nobody's thinking outside the box. You see, you have to go to India or to the great seers of the different religious traditions. Find them somewhere and inquire. That's what you did in the vichara stage. You see. So this first four stages, I'm going through it to reacquaint us, because it's been, a couple months since we all met, and took up the Akshi Upanishad slokas that we have gone through. So this will warm us up to it again. I hope you've been studying it, of course, while we're gone, because I've been gone 2 months from the Portland area, but you could have taken these first 14 slokas and meditated upon them for 2 months. One every 2 or 3 days, and just roll it in your mind. Think about it every day. Create new nadis for it. A nadi is a channel. So your mind is potentially, your mind is like, I think of one of those big soapstones which they start carving things in, right? You just take the soapstone, just carve intricate things, worlds inside of the stone. Well, your mind is much like that. And that could be used as a negative teaching, because you're carving too many samskars into it. But what we mean by this is that you can take the mind and open channels to the light by making these carvings. You use these tools called Atmavichara and teacher and guru and scriptures and yoga and so forth. You use them as tools to run holes through the mind. Well, our teacher Swami Sheshananda used to say that. How do you become holy? You make a hole in the mind. So he knew how to do this with austerity and with daily. Because the monks are doing this, or should be doing this daily. It's almost shame on you if you don't get free after one lifetime of that kind of intensity. But the householders don't have that luxury. And so they have to renounce as they walk through it. Bhoga Marga is not going to do it, path of enjoyment, but Yoga Marga could do it. See? The monks are following the Jnana Marga. They should do it with the Shruti. See? Serious interpretations of the Shruti given by the teacher, fixed attention and contemplation. This is how they're doing it. So, but the householders, a few of them will be able to do that, follow the Jnana Marga, or mix the Jnana Marga, healthy doses of it, into their path. A few of my students are doing that. But it's the Yoga Marga, this transformation, sort of like going through all the motions and learning as you proceed. You learn. Each day is a transformation of mind. Because you're taking these important things and working them into your daily life. And if those are missing, then you're just walking blindly and not waking up. Waking up to what? Waking up to knowing that it's all a dream. All processes are dreamlike, and that you are already what you are, perfect and pure, indivisible, everywhere. I just chanted all-pervasive. That Brahman is everywhere and in everything. So that's your true nature, Atman and Brahman. You'll see, somebody told me recently that this mudra means the merging of Brahman with Atman. It was a Christian priest who told me that. This means he's an Indian, Hindu man, but he's a Catholic priest. So he said, this is the merging of Brahman and Atman. This is Buddha's, famous mudra. So you take this Atman, which is apparently divided in the koshas and the sheaths, body, mind, energy, all that, and you merge it with Brahman. And that's for everyone to do. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that. The monks will renounce inwardly and outwardly. And that's their quick way. But the householder has to renounce inwardly. He won't be able to renounce outwardly. Not in the sense the monk does. So inwardly you know that it's a dream. That's what they're saying. It's a projection of your mind. It's dreamlike. And you can't get hypnotized by it, or you lose your yoga. You fall out of yoga. You won't even get to the first stage. And doesn't it sound like what's going on? They're not even getting to the first stage of getting over transmigratory life, even though they're suffering greatly due to transmigratory life. It doesn't make sense. So the teachers are there, to try and get them to awaken, so they can get a little non-attachment, so they can see that it's all dreams, so that they can get free and live in non-duality. It's a beautiful system, and the way the Sun God's explaining it in these few words, although he does expand on it, is just straightforward. Anyone could follow it. A child could follow it, which is probably, why Swami Vivekananda said you could become a yogi in 6 months if you applied yourself. Well, that's my preamble to today's class on Akshi Upanishad to review for us that we are right here about the third stage now. We'll enter the third stage actually on Sloka 19, so we're still talking about studies and Acharya. And you remember we left off probably with this chart on the import of Jnana Yoga. That is, there are some people who realize the great import of it, and it falls in this category, a quick review. Those who are unacquainted with the path of knowledge, like I'm saying, they're just acquainted with the path of action. That's it for them, you see. I am the agent, they're saying, but you should be saying, I'm not the agent. When I realize that and destroy my karmas, then I'm an inactive actor, you see. And then it's all happening by the will of God. In fact, that's one of the slokas that is coming up here that we've taken before. I realize that it's either my own karma or it's the will of God that's going on here. So they've separated the wheat from the chaff there and specified why they're in the predicament they're in, so that they can get to a higher condition. They're being very honest with themselves. They're taking themselves to task, probably with every breath and every day. And that is this kind of purification that you want to do before you get very deep in meditation. And that's not happening. They're going deep in meditation and taking these impurities with them. In the Western culture, we're seeing that happen. And otherwise, 6 months, you'd be a yogi. Well, what happened to 50 years since Zen Buddhism came here? See? And then Tibetan Buddhism after that. Then Chinese Buddhism after that. Well, that's not 6 months. We're talking about 50 years and nothing much has happened. Where's our luminary? We have to go back to 1893 and say, oh, thank God we had a patron saint come here to the West in the form of Vivekananda, so we could awaken in one lifetime. So that's a sort of observation, or maybe even a criticism about our own culture we're living in, but it seems to be true. And so the one avenue of activity and then maybe some meditation thrown in is not going to do it. So those unacquainted with Jnana Yoga will put 2 parts of their mind on the world. And they'll put 1 part of their mind on study and meditation, and they'll put the other 1/4 of their mind on worship. Those are not yet acquainted with the power of the Mother's word, what the word can do to you if you understand it, and that she's in the word. That's a deeper level of understanding of words than we have in college and school and Western education. We think, oh, I understand what you're saying, or I don't understand what you're saying. But actually, both of them, I'm only understanding, even when I understand, I'm only understanding the surface of what you're saying. I'm not understanding the word can awaken intelligence in me that's sleeping. It can awaken spiritual consciousness, Chaitanya Ho. See, Sri Ramakrishna says, Chaitanya Ho, and tell you, may your consciousness be awakened. So that awakening of consciousness can happen, very rarely happens through work or progeny or breathing exercises or hatha or any of that, Shankara says. It's going to happen through the spoken word coming from the illumined soul. That will awaken you. And the thicker the ignorance is, the longer that spoken word is going to take to penetrate your mind, you see. But the more refined your awareness is, the quicker you'll awaken when you hear those words. Then you'll be sitting attentively, like I say, like I was with my guru, hanging on every word. What did he say next? What's he going to say next? I'm drinking that in. Like I was talking with a young man last night. I went on for an hour and a half answering his questions. He was drinking every word in, and he never got tired, and he had more questions. So this is kind of a rare thing in young people. They'll fall out, like most of the older people kind of fall out in the midst of it. But to have somebody that's really keen on hearing that wisdom. They're beginning to appreciate not that level, but the next level. Those who are familiar with Jnana Yoga, as Swamiji wanted us to be, Vivekananda, give one part of their mind to the world. So before it was two parts. So now you're taking one part of the mind away of those two parts, away from the world, and you're putting it on study and meditation. So one part of the world goes, one part of the mind goes to the world only, one part goes to the mind, and two parts go to worship of the teacher. Worship just doesn't mean, I bow and touch his feet and that's it. Once a day, I go and I listen to what he says and I do it. Do what he says. That's real worship of the Guru. Because it's not really, they don't care if you bow and touch their feet. It's not doing them any good. In fact, maybe transferring some of your negativities to them by doing that. As Holy Mother used to say. But still, that's why they're there. And any method they can use to break down these barriers and these reactions and these obstacles, they'll use it. But the most efficient one is if you come, listen, and do it yourself. That's the quickest, the most efficient, the less problematic for the both of us. And this is really the meaning between Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Kara Bhavahai. That really means may the teacher and the student understand each other, learn from each other, and get to the goal together. That's all that means. Not finding fault and all that, that almost doesn't even need to be said. Because in the proper, pure relationship between Guru and Shishya, that's what they're about. This is what they're trying to initiate, is this perfect relationship where you speak, I listen, we understand, that's it, game over. It's done. Sort of like this process. And hopefully it'll happen in one life. But it maybe can happen in 10 years, or depending on the culture you're in and the upbringing you had, maybe take longer. But that's what you want to affect in one lifetime. That's the purpose you're here. No other purpose whatsoever. So Jnana Yoga is the quickest, most powerful, but possibly the most difficult of all yogas to do that with. And Americans are active enough. They're not plodding under the weights of, say, India, that was when Swami Vivekananda was there, and seeing how tamasic India had become, and forgotten their scriptures and everything. But America came, here's some activity, here's some energy, so we can use this energy, from Rajas to get to Sattva, and then from Sattva they can understand deeper and deeper levels of the teachings, because their minds are buoyant. See, they're not dealing with the heaviness and the resistance and the arrogance, the unpopularity of the Guru, the taking church for your refuge instead of Guru and yourself. They can understand these things. Vivekananda said that. Most of the Westerners have become dissatisfied with the church and the teachings that are coming from it in these days. And they want to go to the Upanishads and hear the truth, Shruti, the way it's being told by the teacher, or the Smriti, The children should hear the Smriti. And they have these great examples like Ram growing up with Vashishta. I'll show you a chart about that in a minute. So give two parts of the mind. They take one, if you wanted to assess these two levels, you'd say that it is by taking, the difference is those who didn't know about Jnana Yoga gave two parts of their mind to the world. But now look at one of those parts has been taken away from the world and it's been given to study and worship the Guru. So that's the difference between a person who became aware that Jnana Yoga was important, as before they didn't. You see, they only thought that maybe some outer worship of the Guru might do it. I have a path and a Guru, and I go once a week. You see, and I do some ritual, and that's enough. You see, but never any Jnana Yoga entered into the mix. You see. I did never sit with a scripture or read the Gita or read the Gospel of Ramakrishna or take up the words more seriously with an acharya telling me what they mean. I never did that, you see. So therefore, I was unacquainted with the power of Jnanam, Atma Gyan. That's not even about sleeping and waking, that's just about truth. You walk into that atmosphere and you're not awakening anymore. You're remembering everything that's in you. It's like automatic qualifier. It's dharma that's already been digested and realized, and you just had some covering in front of it. So you awaken to it. But the highest level of it then, and we're going through this quickly, is those who possess jnana. What do they say? Well, one part of my mind is on the study of the scriptures. One part of my mind is on the study of methods to remove desire. One part of the mind is on the study of ways of self-cognition. And one part of the mind is on the path of how to best worship the Guru. So what's missing there? Surprise, there's no part of the mind on the world anymore. The first two have two parts in the world, one part in the world. Now they're not even thinking about the world at all, because the world doesn't exist for them anymore. Only Brahman exists. The world is Brahman. So you can see how Jnana Yoga is sort of like this collyrium that just clears the eyes. It's sort of a nepenthe, it's just like put it in there and everything just comes clear right away. Like putting alum in brackish water. Immediately clears. That's Jnana Yoga done in this right way, with the desire for freedom, finding a teacher to help you get free, and gaining non-attachment to things that are not real. Why should you have any kind of desire for the world? So the part of the mind on studies to remove desire, see? But that's not really on the world, is it? Because desire is in the mind. It's not in the world. So you're going into your mind deeper, and when you go into your mind, you find out that it has desires there, vasana samskaras, and then you're removing the desires, and they're not feeding your samskaras anymore. And one day you awaken and say, "Oh, my delusion's gone, utterly gone." You see, because I took away it's like taking fuel away from fire. Can't burn anymore. Or germinating seeds, you burn them over the fire a little bit and they don't germinate anymore when you put them in soil. So you can put a great soul, a spiritual soul, in the soil of the world and he won't germinate there. He's not producing any desires or objects for desire. He's just there to show you how to be totally neutral, to be sterile. See? So the mind teaches to say, you teach your children self-expression here. Don't teach them self-expression. Teach them renunciation. Because self-expression in this culture is freedom to the senses, but you don't want to give freedom to the senses. You want freedom from the senses. So the Guru is sitting there explaining this very clearly to you, but you're on this absolute opposite page that's saying, I've got to have my children express themselves. Express themselves. Their ego is what it is. Oh, I become a great musician. I'm just expressing my ego in front of people. Now I'm a great musician, you see. Nonsense. Nothing great about that. So what's great about is expressing Brahman through the music. And that has nothing to do with the ego. That has to do with egolessness, you see. So the Guru is just sitting there explaining that very clearly to you, like my teacher, because that was a quote from my teacher, did to 30 or 40 people sitting in his congregation right up the street here in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Don't teach them self-expression. Teach them renunciation. Because, if they renounce the world, they can be anything. And they can be anything in the right way. They're not going to be searching for money. They're not going to be acquiring cars and houses. They're not going to be marrying 50 times or having lots of ignorant children. They're just going to be themselves, expressing Brahman. So these are very clear words coming from some of the great teachers of the day, like Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, but people aren't down with it. They're not understanding it, and they're not agreeing with it. They're arrogant, they're prideful, and they have to learn their own lessons by suffering. I'll raise my children as a great this or a great that until they finally just turn their back on me when I die. See, they don't care about me. I gave everything to them. So you got two problems there. First, I gave, which you shouldn't have gotten into, and then they turned away from me, which you shouldn't have had attachment for them in the first place. See, so it's all ego play. What do egos say? I love you. See, I love you, I love you. But who loves God? Well, I'll love God when he comes to me, the ego says. But will God come into your living room? Will God come into your TV set? Will God come into your bowling alley or your football field? You see, you have to go, like Samkriti did, to that God inside of you. And you have to do it in a way that is accomplished. Stage by stage, inward I go, the world goes away. If the world goes away, then shouldn't I suspect that maybe it is unreal because it goes away? But it's the opposite with people. Since God isn't there, God went away. Because you didn't love God, then he's not coming to you. And he won't come on your football field and to your soccer field or whatever, where you're jumping up and down acting like an idiot because somebody's throwing a ball around the field. So give up your preoccupation with toys. So my teacher used to say, the West, the scientists, everyone are just like children. They're playing with toys. And if their red toy gets taken away, they become unhappy, you see. Or if it comes broken or doesn't work anymore, they become unhappy and they look for the next toy. But you know, so you have to give up toys and get truth. From toys to truth. This is another very simple way in which he told us this. I'm on the stories of Swami Sheshananda because next week we have a retreat. We have some 16 or more people coming to it. And the subject of that retreat is my Guru's teachings. So I'm thinking a lot about it. And so it's working its way into this class. But we went through some of this chart last time, is where we left off. So now we've just concluded it. And a quote there from Lord Vashishta says, contemplate deeply, find that nothing truly exists, not you, but only the one rare Jnanam, that one non-dual wisdom that you're arriving at when you get to the fifth stage, which is a kind of deep sleep, sushupti, where all the seeds are that came out later in your dreaming and waking state and turned into objects are actually back in you. They're your thoughts. But now you express them, you see. And they became worlds. And when you go to sleep, you take them back. So deep sleep, and they all go away again, but the seeds are still there. So back and forth you go, from form to formlessness, from unmanifested nature to manifested nature, in rounds, every day, then every lifetime, then over cosmic cycles, without ever going beyond the three states and finding the word. Beyond AUM is the Svara, it's non-duality. And so you never know what that is, because deep sleep isn't conscious. And you don't know that all the seeds for your worlds lie in your deep sleep state, and that you're the one that waters them. And then you can, if you find that out, you can not water them. Say, I don't think I'll water those seeds anymore. I don't think I'll water the seeds of children and more births and riches and everything, musicians and athletes. I don't think I'll water that anymore. See, I think I'll just come as I am. It's like a come as you are party. See? Because when the ego comes to the party, he spoils things. See? He stays too long, he causes trouble. See? You go and ask him, when are you leaving? He says, I'll think about it. So the ego is there at the party of the world, causing all sorts of problems and delays to the truth that I am Atma Brahma, that this self is Brahman, that the world is a dream, and other great conclusions you should be having all the time. These should be dancing in your mind, not the macabre dance of objects and desires and passing families and more lifetimes of this and that. You should have arrived at this non-dual state where you're truly peaceful for all time again. You're not falling out of peace anymore. so that families and money and all things are fine. Either way, take them or leave them, you see, but I'm in peace about it all. I never get ruffled, or I never react. When the riches go away or when they come, it's the same thing to me. See? Did it change me at all? No, because I am me and I'm non-material. I'm not matter, I'm not energy, I'm not thought. I'm a spiritual entity called the Atman, and I'm one with myself. And so these conclusions come to people, and they become quicker, this chart says, Yoga Fuchsia's chart, if you recognize and possess the rare Jnanam. So this is the quick. If there is a quick path, which there probably isn't, because this will take maybe a lifetime too, then Jnanam's it. See, Bhakti's been called the long, slow boat, you see, journey. See, scenic, see, fun. You see. But Jnana will just put things to rest right away. So that chart we had last time, and if you want, what we didn't get to is this little vignette here about King Virochana going to his son, giving advice to his son, Bali, about Jnanam. So Bali goes to Virochana and says, why are you the way you are? You're a king, you have riches and palaces and all these things, but you don't seem to be attached to them whatsoever. Well, that's because I'm attached to Jnanam. And Bala says, well, tell me about Jnanam. So King Virochana says in a very slimmed down way, first you subjugate desire for the world, then you secure right livelihood so that you don't have to work anymore to take your mind off of God. And then in that you make sure that you attain sattva guna. Balance. You want to get balance. Work should lead to balance. And balance is knowledge. Vivekananda said, the only efficacy at all, the only purpose for work is to give you knowledge. And once you get knowledge, you can give work up. So this is sattva guna. You're not sitting there thinking, what do I do next with my, my life? My flood of days. What do I do next? Where's my next action? You're just like, I don't have any action, ultimately, and I don't think I'll have any today. I think I'll spend my time in Atmagyan and be content and be perfect as the self is perfect. And then gain detachment is almost what's going on here, isn't it? And then perform Atmic inquiry, you see, a little different order, and then attain jnana and finally realize moksha. See, so he doesn't stop there. He says, you're going to realize moksha. And this is how he advises his son. You're not telling him, go express yourself as something. That's probably not good for someone like Bala anyway, a Surk nature. So you're just trying to get them, into a higher state of mind. So sattva guna would be what you want to get. I mean, your Surk nature will fall away if you're sattvic, because your desires will disappear in sattva. You say, well, I don't really need anything right now. I feel great. You see, it happens to people. All people really happens to, but it just doesn't last very long. Today I feel good. I don't think I'll work. I don't think I'll eat. I don't have any desire. Your mind is just poised. But it doesn't last very long before it comes back on you. Restlessness or heaviness returns. Tamas and rajas. So, a good advice for a kingly seer, who's a combination of king and seer, King Virochana, to give to his son Bala to help him understand who he is, who he truly is. That is, who he is, and also who his son is, and how they're one. So, let's as Vivekananda said, let's be about serving the world and waking up souls. We can compare notes later. So they've come to compare notes, you see. What did you find out in your life, Father? Well, here's what I found out, and here's how to go about it. See, parents should have this information readily available for them. Oh, you should do this, and express yourself that way, and make this money, and then have a wife and children, and all that. Oh, race. Actually, what I mean is, you should get sattva guna, you should get detachment, you should realize the world's a dream. And then if you want wife and money, it won't harm you. Of course, the monk isn't going to want to hear any of that. See? Samkriti doesn't want to hear any of that when he goes to Surya. He's done with that. He wants to know how to do it better or not do it at all. Isn't that really a good way of putting it? If you come back again for another lifetime, you want to know how to do it better, freer of weights and darkness and karmas and samskaras, or not do it at all. And that's where these realized souls are. How do I not do it at all? Because I still find I have this sanchita karma back there lurking. It comes on me once in a while, you see, causing me to think in errant ways. So I don't want that to happen anymore. Because if I intensify my sadhana, that will intensify exponentially along with it, you see. It's like a shadow following you. And when you get bigger, it gets bigger. And when you get smaller, it gets smaller. So how do I get rid of the shadow? How do you get rid of a shadow on a sunny day?
Stand in the shade.
Better, you stand directly under the sun. If the sun is one way or the other way, it's casting a shadow. So directly under the sun, no shadow is cast. Well, going to the shade is an alternative. It's cooler. But this is a way to efface the ego for all time. You see, if you stay directly under the sun all the time, the shadow will never come back. But if you come out of the shade, it'll come back. So you want to be under the sun of non-duality all the time. That's your compass, that's your guide, that's your light. And this is what Samkriti is doing with Surya. Oh Lord, I place myself at your feet. I mean, I hope you remember back, and I hope you've even memorized it, how beautiful it is, when he says, O essence of purity, O blessed one, that one who scorches the sins of the world, the blessed swan, essence of purity, you who are the prototype of the bound soul, of the jiva, you rise like the sun, 1,000-rayed, existent in myriad ways, the life of all animate beings. I meditate on you, for you are omniform, you are compassionate, omniscient, ambrosial, of the essence of light, the scorcher of all faults. Salutations to you who are the sun, the offspring of the infinite, the power of the eye to see, the flood of days. All hail. And when Surya hears that, he says, thus glorified by means of the science of the wise, the Lord in the form of the sun was highly gratified and said, whichever Brahmana studies without break this science of the wise never contracts any eye disease. None is born blind in his family. Teaching this to 8 Brahmanas, or sons and daughters, one becomes perfect in this science. Whosoever knows this is magnified in wisdom. Their wisdom is magnified. And they always have access to it. So no defect of the eye is ever there with them. Not just these 2 eyes, but this eye, you see, mainly. So they always know the light. Now this is the beginning of this Upanishad we refer back to in this regard, in this context, that Samkriti wants to have that highest. He wants to be under the sun of non-dual wisdom with no shadow cast anymore. And you might say that is a rare soul who arrives at such a high plateau, like 6th, 7th chakra type of realization. But those are our ideals. Those are our exemplars. We look at Ramakrishna and Vivekananda and beings like that, Ramana Maharshi, and we see, you know, that these are those who have either arrived or they arrived many times before and they're coming again. Avatars, you know, past masters. We call them past masters. They're not just a master for the first time in a series of lifetimes. They're past masters. They're nitya siddha, eternally perfect, and that's what Ramakrishna called Narayan, Swami Vivekananda. He's nitya siddha. So he knew that that soul, you know, that was a sun that could never be covered by darkness. And that knowledge was always shining. And Vivekananda used to say that. He says, some souls are like suns covered with clouds. You see, some souls are clear blue sky. No clouds ever come to them, you see. A clear blue sky of open mind, as the Tibetan Buddhists teach in their teachings. So some of this is current, and some of this is an explication of these first 3 steps and leading on to some aforemention of 4 and 5, and some of that is here in terms of Jnanam and how important it is. So let me read you the next sloka as we have a few minutes before our break. Let's read from 10 through 15, which is some of what we covered last time. Coming to this next state of yoga called vichara, the sadhaka resorts to the foremost scholars, well known for their serious interpretations of scripture, and their good conduct, their ability to fix their attention unbroken, and their contemplation, and their divine activities. So these are past masters for sure. And further, as a householder knows his homestead, so having mastered all that has to be learned, the serious sadhaka, who's the practitioner, comes to know the categories and the doctrines vis-a-vis what has to be done and what has to be avoided. So in studying the scriptures, there's a section, Karma Kanda, which divides what should be done and what shouldn't be done. The ordinances of the scriptures will dictate to you, Krishna says in the Gita, what should be done and what shouldn't be done. So follow those as long as you need them. And then will come a time when, as you master all the categories and all the doctrines. So what does that mean? I mean, interpreter here had to use some English words. Categories really means tattvas, if you take it into Sanskrit. Tattvas are buddhi, ahamkara, that's intellect, ego, mind, manas, with its 5 senses and the 5 elements and the 5 subtle senses, the tanmatras, those are categories. You become a knower of the tattvas. And how they came out from prakriti and purusha, how it all comes out and how it gets dissolved back in over endless cycles of time. And if you know this, you can get away from the cycles of time like Buddha did. Today's his birthday, so he said, I have no hope for me, I'm not coming back again. I've seen through it all. O architect of the house of Maya, I've seen you. Now that I've seen you, I won't build any more houses. Not houses of wood, not houses of stone, not houses of flesh and bone. And finally, no houses of wise conception. I'm not going to come back and be an erudite scholar, just like pontificate, about all I know. I'm not going to build any more of those kinds of houses. So that's what he said, Lord Buddha. So you can well then believe that he's mastered all the categories and all the doctrines. In the Dhammapada he says, become a knower of Brahman by learning all the words and all the philosophies. That doesn't sound like most people's interpretation of the Buddha, But no, he very much was for you mastering all the words and all the sciences, because that's the Jnana Yoga you're talking about, and that's one lifetime quick path to truth. He's Buddha, he's the awakened one, he's the intelligent one, and he's proposing that you practice the path of knowledge and meditation together. Not just the path of action and devotion. So those beings that we most recognize and we most value have those qualities of deep meditation and knowledge to them. Others are saints. We can appreciate them. But these seers are exceptional. They have all 4 yogas. And so that was sloka 12. The householder knows his homestead. So just like that, the practitioner should know all the categories and the doctrines. What are the doctrines? Samkhya.
6 groups of truth, 10.
All the doctrines means all the darshanas, basically. Yoga, Samkhya, Vedanta, Tantra, Jainism, Buddhism, whether they're orthodox or non-orthodox, Yoga Vishishta, all these doctrines are there. You should familiarize yourself with all of those, if not study them deeply, or at least study one deeply and know the rest. I mean, Sri Ramakrishna said a variety store owner knows a little about everything. That's what he meant, that there's some souls that know all the varieties. Oh, I'm looking for this little screw that's about 1 inch long and it's used only in cement, and oh yeah, that's down that aisle down there. You see the signs down there, go down there and look on the left, the last gate, there it is, you see. So that he knows where to direct you to everything. So if you come at him with a question, a seer, a question about something, like the man I was talking to, young man last night, had questions about coming from all different areas. And so I was the variety store owner, and I could say, well, that really is best handled by this particular darshan. This is the answer to that question. That's the best way to think of this. Game over, ignorance gone. Now I can go on to my next question, see. And this way I can light up the whole store, you see. Might be a couple dark corners there where the fluorescent lights have burned out. I can go replace them. Light up the whole mind again, so that nothing's a secret to you anymore. It's knowing the categories and the doctrines, and if you do that, you're a candidate for non-attachment and realizing the substanceless nature of the world. It's anityam and it's asukham. Anicca means it's not eternal, and asukha means there's no happiness in it. Who said that? Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So here, let's have our break, come back and launch into a new chart or two that has to do with knowing the doctrines and knowing the categories. Namaste.